is Lieutenant General retired Ben Hodges. He's a former commander of the US Army in Europe, and he joins us right now. Good morning to you, Ben.
Yeah, good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. We've been speaking to you throughout the last year and a half since the invasion of Ukraine. You are based in Germany, retired now, but very much, I know, very much involved with NATO capability and what is going on. Just first up, your initial reaction to what you believe happened on Saturday when we had this attempt at a coup. Prigozhin, marching his troops up to Moscow. He's a couple of hours away, and then he turns back. There's a deal done. He slinks back to Belarus. What do you believe happened?
Well, first, this mutiny, this aborted mutiny, is not what happens in armies that believe that they're on the way to victory. So it reveals so much, not just about the Putin regime, but also just the chaos and the hatred and rivalry inside the Russian military. That's a top line for me, what I would take away from it. I think that, and the reason I use mutiny instead of coup, a mutiny is about bargaining. I don't think Prigozhin really intended. In fact, I'm not sure what they thought was going to happen. 400 vehicles on the march to Moscow, a massive metro area would be swallowed up in the city. That's not a big force. I mean, what were they going to do? Drive to Red Square and expect people to, just to come out and greet them? Or I don't think they had a plan, actually. So this mutiny was about bargaining. He got a price, and as you've already pointed out, we don't know exactly what the deal is. I don't think he's going to spend the rest of his days in Belarus cooling his heels. We're going to learn a lot more in the next few days.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We understand he wanted the defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, removed. But he mocked Putin openly. He talked about getting a new president. He has been, I think the kids would call it, dissing Putin publicly on his Telegram page and in videos. We know that many Russian fighting soldiers, watch his videos, watch what he has to say. Putin doesn't put up with that kind of stuff. So why is Yevgeny Prigozhin, to a certain extent, a creation? The power he has is as a result of what Putin has, basically gifted him. Why is he still able to have that power? Why would Vladimir Putin allow him even to, let's face it, survive? I mean, people who've said far less have found themselves falling out of windows, haven't they?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think Prigozhin, they all have something on each other. I mean, this is a gigantic mafia construct with nuclear weapons, unfortunately. But it is not about a constitutionally based government or the normal hierarchical structures where there's a shred of trust and loyalty to the nation versus what's in their own best interest. I think Prigozhin must have something on Putin, or Putin was waiting for the right time to get rid of Shoigu anyway. I mean, he can't possibly be happy with the performance of the military. But it also makes me wonder, I mean, how much control does he really have? He may have been concerned that the military would not respond. And there was nobody in the street rushing to rally in support of President Putin.
And certainly as the Wagner Group troops marched from Ukraine up to Rostov-on-Don, a major logistical military hub for Russian forces fighting in Ukraine, they met, by all accounts, not just little resistance, no resistance whatsoever. And that would have been the concern, wouldn't it? Do we know where Vladimir Putin is right now? There were some reports that the presidential plane had left Moscow. We know he spent a lot of time, in his bunker at the Kremlin, a lot of time in one of his various, dashes, various different homes. I mean, let's face it, people think that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He ain't. Vladimir Putin has secreted far more money away in Swiss bank accounts and with all his cronies over the years. Do we think he is still in the Kremlin?
I honestly don't know. I think there's a variety of possibilities. I think his biggest priority has always been self-preservation and the preservation of his regime. Yeah. And so, the idea of being drugged through Red Square like Gaddafi was, or Saddam Hussein being pulled out of a hole, that kind of thing is is absolutely what he's not does not want to see. So there also have been a lot of reports lately on social media about doubles. How many people are used to show where he is. Of course, they would know that airplanes can be tracked by anybody that has the app. So I honestly don't know where he is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I wonder if anyone in Russia does right now. He's keeping himself very safe. In terms of what happens next, the big implications, there's a lot of talk. I mean, let's have a little listen to what US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had to say on American TV last night about the Wagner mutiny, the word you use there. And he says about this showing cracks emerging in Putin's authority. Let's listen to what he had to say.
So I think this is clearly... we see cracks emerging. Where they go, if anywhere, when they get there, very hard to say. I don't want to speculate on it, but I don't think we've seen the final act. This has been a devastating strategic failure for Putin across virtually every front: economic, military, geopolitical standing.
I mean, those words are certainly all true, aren't they? But where does this leave us when it comes to the Ukraine war? There was a lot of talk of Ukraine being able to take advantage, Ben Hodges, of this confusion in Russia and being able to mount their counteroffensive and win back territory. But there are also concerns that actually, Vladimir Putin may respond to this by acceding to Yevgeny Prigozhin's demands for, frankly, a more brutal war in Ukraine.
I think those are all possibilities. British intelligence from the beginning has been in front of almost everybody on their assessments. And several months ago, UK intelligence said that 95% of the Russian army is committed in Ukraine. That's stunning, and I was reminded of that when the Wagner forces were moving towards Moscow almost without resistance, as you said earlier. It's because there is nobody else, not real forces, that are there to do anything about it. So that's got to be a concern for the Russians. I think now the Russian military has lost 25,000 troops. I mean, that's how many were believed to have been a part of Wagner, and they have been told, you can reintegrate to the military if you sign up with the MOD. I doubt many of them will want to do that.
They get treated better in the Wagner group, don't they?
Absolutely. It'll be a pay cut. And plus, the Army traditionally hates mercenaries, it hates Chechens, and it hates the FSB, the intelligence service. So any of these 25,000 that do decide to reintegrate will be looked at with great suspicion. So that's a big chunk of experienced manpower no longer really available to the Russian forces. I
mean, there'll be a lot of people who over the weekend say, well, it's interesting to watch. It's a bit Hollywood movie-esque, but, it doesn't really impact me. But as we've seen with the Ukraine war, the economic sanctions, the impact, the people fleeing the war, that actually, this does have an impact on the whole of Europe and, and wider as well. If there is unrest or civil war in Russia, if we do see an unseating Vladimir Putin, a battle for power, there is the real concern that this is a nuclear state, and it will be the first nuclear state to fall into full-on civil war if that were the case. What are your concerns about the use of nuclear weapons?
So, of course, all of us are concerned about who controls these things. The Iranians would love to get their hands on loose nuclear weapons for their own purposes. So that will always be a concern for us. But I think that the West, and I would love to hear what Tobias Ellwood has to say on this later in your program, our leaders are going to have to recalculate how they look at Putin. He clearly cannot trust any of his officers. And, to use a nuclear weapon requires a lot of people to do things in the process. This is not him with a big red button on his desk. It's a chain. And I think his confidence that they would actually be willing to do this has got to be really significantly reduced. So maybe, we should stop deterring ourselves. And clearly, Putin, when he's confronted, seriously confronted, he puts himself into a corner. He's not going to launch a nuclear weapon. I don't believe.
Yeah, you've been consistent on that throughout. Ben Hodges, thank you so much for joining us. Former commander of the US Army in Europe, retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. So appreciate your analysis and your expertise. Thank you.